Major funding for this program is provided by American Express, celebrating the world of creativity through American Masters, the National Endowment for the Arts, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by annual financial support from viewers like you. Additional funding is provided by Rosalind P. Walter and Jack Rudin.
I'm supposed to be you. When I do your show, I'm here. This is where you sit. Now, what do we do first?
First, you greet the audience and say hello, and,
You welcome the audience.
So I say that.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Hold it, Jack.
Well,
it's time for the first commercial.
already? I just got started.
It'll only take a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a 17-jewel, shockproof, waterproof wristwatch. Now, watch this remarkable demonstration. There you are. This hammer can be purchased at your local market.
One staffer said one time, he said, you got to understand, he said, Jack is not mentally ill. He's a carrier of mental illness.
Brown, what do you do for exercise?
I stumble and then I fall into a coma.
He is a very rare man who was a very rare personality.
How did you hear you're going to have a baby?
How did you hear you was going to have a baby? I hate to get it in the mail, I'll tell you that.
Never mind what night. Just tell me when the baby... Your wife was already pregnant when this happened.
Hey, you know more about it than me. We didn't even know you then.
No, the little one. You don't know me. She calls me Dada. You know the little one.
The guy lived his life on the screen.
I have a cold tonight on top of everything. Everything's running but me, you know. And that's bad, cold. You have to be careful. They dry your sinuses and, you know, and your, what are these things? Sinuses and, not adenoids. What are these? Fingers. Fingers, yes.
Jack had the ability, I think, to seize on what was going on at the time. He sensed the times as they were.
Can Kennedy be defeated in '64?
Well, which one?
If you made Paar, I mean, that was it for you.
All these guys, they will kick off. They will kick off. All right, this team here will kick off. We'll kick off. What goal we defend? We defend any goal you give us. Yeah.
He's really like the person you see on the screen. That's Jack Paar.
I would guess that people would think you and I would feel a little awkward, kind of embracing.
No.
But it didn't feel awkward
I
at
wish
all.
that I had never given you the show. I wish I had rented it to you.
You could have leased it, huh?
Or I wish I had married you if I really wanted.
Jack created the first real talk show where people talked.
He was so many things at midnight, and he was live, and he was exciting, and he found new people, and he helped new people, and he brought on the superstars of the world who never before would even think of exposing themselves to an ad-lib show.
It almost didn't matter in the Paar days what else was on the air, because America was watching The Tonight Show with Jack Paar.
This youngster was born in Canton, Ohio, and grew up in Jackson, Michigan. 25 years after eating this ice cream cone, he appeared in a motion picture with this unknown actress, Marilyn Monroe. He had to leave school in the 10th grade after contracting tuberculosis. He never returned to school because he said, "For me, algebra is not necessary in the real world. And since I didn't plan to lay carpets, neither was geometry." Despite a youthful stutter and stammer, he became one of the youngest radio announcers in the country. He was an avid reader and is entirely self-taught. He got a job as an announcer at a radio station in Jackson, Michigan, and at 18, he was the station's news reporter. Despite the lack of a formal education, he brought a sophistication to late-night television, and the Los Angeles Times called him the Midnight Edward R. Murrow. From the 60s into the 80s, Jack Paar was one of the most publicized personalities in America. He has written 4 best-selling books and has been the writer and producer on 6 television documentaries. Look magazine called him an original. Tom Shales, the television critic, wrote, "Before Paar on the Tonight program, there was nothing like him. The footprints he left on the moonscape of television are enormous. They will be there forever." Not everyone agreed. Jack is most amused by a critic who wrote, "Par's mind is 1 part genius and 2 parts chocolate fudge."
You know, you and I have something in common in that, well, I worked in Indianapolis, too, you know.
That's right. I'm from Indianapolis.
WRE,
Yeah?
Indianapolis.
Yeah.
You know, I had a stutter when I was a kid.
How old were you then?
I was about, well, I was, when I well, I was about 12 when I had tuberculosis. Do you want to fool with that or not? Oh. But then I had to stutter around 14. And I stuttered so badly that I had read somewhere, this sounds silly, that I had read that Demosthenes, a Greek philosopher, had gone to the beach and put pebbles in his mouth to get over his stammering. And I used to go down the basement, I swear, with my mother's sewing basket and put buttons in my mouth to try and stop stuttering. And then I became interested in speech. And that scene of me in the basement rehearsing is part of a motion picture called The King of Comedy. You remember that scene with the little boys practicing in the basement?
Now, is this the film with Robert De Niro and Jerry Lewis?
Yes.
Based on your experience as a child?
Yeah.
This one scene?
Just the scene in the basement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, how did they know about that scene, Jerry?
Oh, shut up. Listen.
Why, I oughta...
And I was the happiest kid in the world. I made about $75 a week, but that was in 38, maybe, 30.
Plus, you're on the radio.
Well, to be on the radio, WGAR, Cleveland, you know. Right. For a guy who stuttered to be able to do that. Now, if you've heard, I know this audience is younger than I'm used to, but Swing and Sway with Sammy Kaye, that was me, and a Rhythmic New Deal with Dick Stabile.
Rhythmic New Deal with Dick
That was what I said with my hand in my ear.
Yeah.
Didn't you always have your hand? See, when you announce over, most announcers who read have their hand to their ear. That's because when you're announcing over theme from the terrace room of the Hotel Sattler, and you can't hear.
Right.
You see,
so
and
this
increases the diaphragm. Although why you would want a diaphragm in your ear, I don't know. The biggest thing in my life was Sunday night because we got paid on Saturday, and I spent all my money on clothes, but I always had a malted milk and a club sandwich. That was the biggest thing, and I always had it at 8 o'clock after I said, WGAR, Cleveland, 8 o'clock, bull of a watch time. And I would rush down, call my mother and say, did I do it okay? She said, you were great. So then I got the sandwich, I come back. Now there was something new called the Mercury Theater, Orson Welles. Nobody ever heard of it, it's brand new. And I was very impressed. Now I missed the first 5 minutes. I'm back in the announcer's booth, and I hear that people are landing in New Jersey. Jesus, that's awful, you know, and I mean, in New Jersey. And I thought, see what happened, they opened it as the regular Mercury Theater, but then they came in and said, we interrupt this program to bring you, and you know, to this day when I hear that, I just get ill because, all right, the phone calls begin to ring. Now on Sunday night, we had 8 trunk lines, but no operator. I had to answer all the phones and the complaints, and the people are calling. And they said, oh, my God, what are we going to do? And I said, I don't know. I think it's a drama. I really don't believe it. And I called the manager, and I said, hell's breaking loose here, Mr. Pat. I think there's trouble in New Jersey. And he said, you're much too emotional. And you are never going to make it. You're never going to make it. He said, but I'm going to call New Jersey. So he was going. The truth is, and you must believe me, or we got nothing here. Most of the country believed it.
That's right.
And I had a button here, and I'd press the button. That would kill the network. It's never supposed to do that. I just couldn't stand the phone calls anymore. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, this is a drama, I think. And, and we're checking with New Jersey. And please do not phone the station, because, God, I can't just handle any more of this, you know. But be calm, be calm. Well, I became a big hero. They were going to fire me, but the next day the photographer's there. I'm the guy that calmed Cleveland. I'm the guy that told the truth. And all right, now cut. 3 years later, honest to God, Sunday I come in, the same thing, the malted milk, the club sandwiches. My life was the same. Made the break, and I hear, boom. The gentleman firing the job, Pearl Harbor, and what the hell's going on? You know, I'm ready for the CBS button. I said, they're doing it again, you know. It was Pearl Harbor. Now, you got to believe me again. Nobody. We didn't know about Pearl Harbor. You know about Hawaii, but Pearl Harbor was not a name. It was a name as obscure as, say, Guadalcanal, which I was on. Nobody knew what was going on. And for hours, nobody knew that it was the Japanese that were bombing. I know. I was in charge. I was there. But the phone calls came again. They said, is this another one of those New Jersey things? And I said, no, I don't think so. I think that I think someone's bombing someplace called Pearl Harbor. And I called the manager. And he said, is it you again? And he said, you're never going to make it. He said, what's happening now? I said, well, they say that they're bombing someplace called Pearl Harbor. He said, you are not to press that button off again at CBS. He said, because if there's World War II, I don't want you involved.
Well, I was involved in World War II. Joining the Army was the greatest career move I made in my lifetime. Without the United States Army and World War II, I would never have made it. I enlisted because I would have been drafted very soon anyhow, but I figured the chic thing to do was to enlist, and so I did. And the next morning I got up on the train with they were all officers, and here I'm a private, and they're shaving and everything. And I thought, well, I'm being treated pretty special. So I said, they would say to me, where you going? Where you going, soldier? I said, I'm going to Indiantown Gap. And they said, well, that's a staging area. And I said, well, I guess that's where I belong, you know. I'm going to be an actor someday. And they all laughed because a staging area meant that's the last place you go before you go overseas. And a few months before going overseas, I met this young lady. We were married a few months later in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Her name was Miriam Wagner. Her mother was a member of the Hershey family. My Army friends attended the wedding. This picture was taken the night before I sailed from Staten Island, New York, to Guadalcanal in the South Pacific. There were enough theaters. May I explain a theater? A theater is a couple oil barrels with plywood on and maybe a movie screen. And each company unit, each one had their own. My point is there were so many men on Guadalcanal when I was there, so many troops, Army, Navy, Marines, aviators, submarines, that you could play a different so-called theater every night for some 40 days and not repeat an audience. That's how big it was. But it was there that I began to work on this thing of needling the officers. I would, when I talked softly, I would say, I would walk out first and say, good evening, volunteers. That was always a big laugh. Nobody wanted to volunteer. Or gentlemen and any officers who are present, I always start very slow. And then I gave it to the officers and needled them.
Jack was to MC at this naval base, and they had like over 2,000 people there, some kids in stretchers and in wheelchairs, you know, had been wounded. And Jack was there ready to go, and Navy people said to him, not just yet, not just yet. And about an hour later, the Commodore came in with the USO girl on his arm, and Jack finally got on the stage and he said, would you believe that 2,000 men have been held up by an officer and a broad? I got a big laugh. And he followed it up, as long as he got a big laugh, why not? And he said, I'm sorry to have kept you waiting. I didn't know the rules, but you can see that the Admiral is here now. He is here with this young USO troop. These are some young dancers who are going to do the dance of the 7 virgins. Unfortunately, their contract was broken tonight. And they said, arrest that man. They took him off the stage, shackled him with handcuffs to a stanchion below stage. The Army and the Navy made a deal. He could not perform for a month. The next time when he performed, it was at a port battalion, and everybody knew about it, and he said, you know, I can't talk about what happened, but it's so nice to be here, lifting his arms, and he had handcuffs dangling from each wrist. Bedlam, beer bottles in the air. And he was on his way back.
He was the voice of the enlisted man, and he was brilliant, and he drew a tremendous crowd. And Sidney Carroll, a writer, went over there for Esquire, and he was bombed out by the comedy and the humor of Jack Paar.
I think his career began in the Army because he learned that he could compete with those heavy acts that were coming through day after day, week after week.
That's when Jack Benny heard about me. He'd been out there and he'd heard about this kid comic, and he came and talked to me. I remember it so well. He was such a handsome man. He had grayer hair than we remember from the movies. And he said to me, look, when you get back home, you look me up.
Now, how did I get in pictures? Well, I came out of the Army and a completely unknown. And I was signed instantly by RKO. I could have been signed by Warner's or Metro. I was in great demand, not because I could act or had any talent, as you all learned later, but it's too late now to give the money back. The thing, I had done something in the war that was written about over and over again about the war that had nothing to do with acting, and I was signed on the basis of that. Now, you've got to believe me or these stories don't work, because if I'm going to make it up, I'll make up funnier stuff than this. So they signed me. Now, my face had never been seen in Hollywood. No still pictures, but I was signed for $300 a week. And I got Pullman fare for my wife and myself. We went to Hollywood, and that was our new life. Now, they have not seen this man that they've signed for $300. But I began to believe maybe I could be an actor. And someone said he looks like Alan Ladd, and I never forgot that. And it was said twice, I look like Alan Ladd. So it got to RKO, and they had a big meeting, and Mr. Rathbone and I think Dory Sherry wasn't there yet, but the big directors were there, and they were going to see that this guy that they signed, this was going to be such a sensational thing. And I thought I was Alan Ladd. And I actually bought a white raincoat like Alan Ladd. And I got a cigarette, and I don't smoke cigarettes. And if you don't smoke cigarettes, you know, men do it very effeminately if you don't smoke cigarettes. But I wanted to walk in, you know, I look more like Ida Lupino, I know. So now they have this big office, and they asked me to come in. And I keep thinking Alan Ladd. And I walked into this director's meeting. And I said, hi. I swear to you, a man jumped up like this and said, Kate Kaiser with warmth.
The contract at RKO was not too extensive, although he did appear in a couple of pictures and was very cute.
3 years I lasted there and never worked. And finally, they threw me into a B picture where I was, of all things, a dancer.
I don't know why you're doing this, because it doesn't seem the kind of thing that I should be doing, because I'm trying to do this okay. You keep doing this. I wish.
Then he got to do a movie with Marilyn Monroe. That made him happy. But the picture career sort of didn't happen.
It's always been my ambition to get hold of a surplus whack.
By the way, I'm having some people in for a housewarming tomorrow night. I'd like you all to come.
Sure thing.
Have you forgotten, dear, we're going out to dinner tomorrow night?
I'm available.
Well, I think I'd better be going. I've hardly unpacked yet.
Do you mind if I come along and help? 3 hands are better than 2.
What do you say we have dinner together?
Wonderful. Where?
Oh, someplace where we don't have to dress, like your apartment?
My wish was to be Fred Allen. I was still radio-oriented. Television wasn't in yet. I wanted to be on the radio. So I looked up Jack Benny and replaced Jack Benny for one summer, and then into the fall, the show was picked up. And I did it with my Army friends. Hy Averback is my closest friend. We met on Guadalcanal. And Larry Gelbart was then 18. I was 26, I think. And a wonderful man called Hans Conried. We were all out of the war. And we made a record. We made a transcription of a show that I wanted to do. And we all wrote, and it was grabbed by the Jack Benny Company right away. And I worked for Jack for over a year. And we became very, very, very close friends. I adored the guy. Then I decided that if I wanted to really do something in show business, I had to go to New York. New York, where television was. It was a little difficult at first because nobody seemed to want someone to just sit and talk, which is what I do. And so I did a lot of silly things.
They have ads in here like you never saw in your life, things that I've sent for. They have these provocative titles. You know, they've run out of exposing everybody. They're now digging up history. For instance, here's the titles in this one. The Cotton Pickin' Truth about Eli Whitney. What was Yankee Doodle drinking the night he stuck a feather in his cap and called it macaroni? Was the Leaning Tower of Pisa originally called the Tilton Hilton? This one I like. Was William Shakespeare really Francis Bacon? Mrs. Shakespeare would like to know. This is the one-a-year vitamin pill. This will not only stop a cold, it will stop the cold at the Canadian border. You take one of these a year in a lake of water, and if pain persists, see your plumber. Now for the children, an educational toy that teaches them all about life. Here we have a little inch square hole and a 3-inch dowel, and the idea is to tell the kids to put it in. The poor little things, they'll try. You can't get it in, but they don't. They try, see. How it teaches them about life is it shows them what they're up against. Here is an English hunting stool, $2.48. You take it wherever you want, and you sit on it, you see, like that. $2.48. For rugged individualists, they have this here thing right here, you see. Now, I'll show you something. The newest thing designed by that big rock and roll singer. It's you know, that rock and roll moving around, getting all perspiration and everything. It's called a cool shirt. I want to show it to you. And good night, Elvis Presley, whatever you are.
I got a call from CBS. They wanted to talk to me. And I went in, they said, you don't have an agent. And I said, no. And they said, well, you better get one. I said, why? And they said, well, we want to negotiate a contract with you. It was to replace Walter Cronkite on the morning show. So I called my mother and I said, Mom, don't worry about me. We've had a rough time, but as of 2 weeks from now, I start at a lot of money, Mom. And don't worry about me anymore, or Randy, or the baby. I'm going to replace Walter Cronkite. She said, not Walter Cronkite. Dad and I love him. I said, well, that's just too damn bad, Mom, but he'll have to find work somewhere, this guy.
Be loyal to people. Watch the CBS Morning Show. And one of the best reasons to watch it is the great piano artistry of Jose Melis, a buddy of mine from the Army. He's been with me for about 10 years, one of the great pianists in our country today. Listen to this arrangement, please, of Lover.
There was something called The Tonight Show. It was just a title, Tonight. And Steve Allen, a very fine musician and some excellent singers, did a show, and they called it Tonight. It was not unlike the Jerry Lester show before it. A variety show, and they gave salamis away, and Steve was sometimes very witty, and that was it. Steve went into prime time then, so there was no Tonight Show. It had been canceled. But they tried several people. Ernie Kovacs tried it, and others, and it didn't work. So now NBC had an idea to do something called America After Dark. And so for 6 months, they tried this other show. And it had the lowest rating, I believe, of any show on television. And now they're desperate, and they called me.
Jack was the last gasp for their Tonight Show. And the show was running out of steam. They were losing stations, and NBC came to Jack. Jack had just had a few very successful shots on the Ed Sullivan Show, and he had done had filled in for some of the people on the Tonight Show. And so they said, all right, Jack, here's a chance. We're going to give this Tonight Show format 13 weeks, and we want you to do it.
So I just did my old Army bit, and I just took over and said, this is what we're going to do. Because there was no Tonight Show. There was no format. There was nothing but a title, Tonight. So I did all I could do was get Elsa Maxwell, Johnny Winters, Jose Mellis, who was in the Army with me, and we started to do the only thing you could do, which was get a desk and try and find witty people and start something called a conversation show.
The NBC television network presents the Jack Paar Show with the Jose Mellis Orchestra conducted by Al Finelli, yours truly Hugh Downs, and Jack's guests tonight, Betty Johnson, Nick Todd, George Gibbett, Cliff Arquette as Charlie Weaver, and Elsa Maxwell. And now, here's Jack.
Jack had seen me on Sid Caesar's Hour. He suggested they get a hold of me, which was a wonderful thing for me. I was happy to be a part of it. And for the opening weeks, I was just, that's all I did was the announcer, just to say, here's Jack.
Well, it's 12 midnight in New York. And ladies and gentlemen, here are the Andrews Sisters of Society, Elsa Maxwell.
But the most important person was this society columnist, Elsa Maxwell. She was I don't know what she did, but she was powerful. And she liked me, and she would come on the air. She was no beauty, as you may remember, and she would say the most outrageous things about society and about King Farouk and the Queen and the King, whom she knew intimately.
I think she's a great person because she's talented, she's clever, she's brilliant, she's fun. She's sometimes rather naughty. She can say wicked little things under her breath.
Well, don't we all?
I know a lovely thing she did once. Sir William Walton is the most boring composer, I'm sorry to say, in England. He composed a great opera, a terrible opera, and the royal family were there at Covent Garden. And the royal family were there. It was a terrible opera. And she would say, boo, boo. Well, they never knew. He never knew they were booing. She was booing the opera. But she did it beautifully.
When we first began the show, Jack very wisely immediately began gathering a series of regular guests. I remember Charlie Weaver. Dodie Goodman was a new face. Charlie wasn't, but he was booked for 2 nights a week, and Dodie Goodman was booked for 2 nights a week.
Alexander King was a real wit, a type. Jack always liked to have him on. He was a commentator on the scene.
Say his mother was the worst cook that ever lived.
Just about. When I see a sign saying homemade cooking, I get chills.
I want to bring out a little girl that we all love so much, and you do too, the little elf from the Eiffel Tower, Genevieve.
The first unique person I had on The Tonight Show was Genevieve. She was a little French girl, a French singer, who came to this country and didn't speak English well, but she had a gamine face, and she was so charming. And we loved each other so much, like brother and sister right away. And she was with me for my entire career, another 8 or 9 years that I went on.
What happened in Las Vegas?
So I go in Las Vegas, not with Jacques Benny. I go in Las Vegas, and you know how I make money? I make $200.
No. That'll break them up there, won't it, boy? They're probably drinking and cutting their throats like mad. Did you break them in? On what game did you play? The stupid game that you and I played?
No, I didn't. No, because it was not the same than in Cuba. That wig. It was not the same.
That
I
wig?
don't like that.
Yes.
You know, it was not the same.
What game did you play?
The roulette.
Did you?
I played the roulette. Everything but you know, I believe.
Why?
They recognize me. And they don't
You mean
want...
you're fixed in Las Vegas? That'll be fine. We'll have some callers. You mean they let you win?
I believe.
Honey, you can't say that. They don't want them fixed even if you win. They're not fixed. It was just good luck. Well,
Yes.
Did they let you win?
I don't know, but everything I put, I win.
One of Jack's most frequent and regular guests was Johnny Winters, whom Jack absolutely thinks is a comedy genius. And Jack said that ad-libbing with Johnny is like shoveling smoke. You can't do it.
He'd come to me, rap on the door. King? Yes, yes, Johnny. I think I will do an Eskimo tonight. You want to do an Eskimo, Johnny? Well, that means I have to start thinking quick. For Eskimo jokes, for myself. I got to protect myself. So I order the prop man to bring in a fur piece and everything. He said, no, then another knock. King, I think I'll do a gay baseball player. A gay baseball player? Oh, hell, I'll just wing it and see what I can do.
I'm the voice of spring. I bring you some little goodies from the park. Only his hairdresser knows for sure. You devil. Where did you decide to do this? This is something new. Well, I've been in the forest, and you've been on Third Avenue is where you've been, I think. Took me 45 minutes to get that in. I'm sorry. In the forest, we don't care.
Under my shoes are hoofs.
Is that right?
My legs are like that of a goat. But I dressed for the city folks. But the birds and the bees and the animals and the fish and the creatures all want to wish everybody a great big spring.
What would you say? What are you? No, I mean, I can't...
They know in the forest.
They have suspicions right here, too, I think.
Well, that was the beginning of the really big years of The Tonight Show. Within 5 weeks, the show was starting to make real good numbers. And before you knew it, was the hottest show on the air. I mean, everybody talked about The Tonight Show with Jack Paar.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, we come to my guest star. If you're bothered with insomnia, he needs no introduction. However, for those of you viewers who fall asleep before 11 o'clock, I would like to present a brand new star, Jack Paar. Jack, I want to tell you, I can't tell you how nice it is having you on my show.
Thank you, Jack.
Well, you're welcome, Jack.
Now, Jack, I wanted to say this.
Now, look, Jack.
Yes, Jack.
No, well, this is what I want to talk to you about. We're going to get all confused, Jack, and I'm Jack and everything. I think that as long as we're going to talk together, we should, I mean, one of us should be called Mr. See, let's say the older one, you know?
Well, that wouldn't do any good because you and I are practically the same age.
How old are you, Jack?
66.
He was the best. And anybody who knew him will tell you that. Wasn't at all like the role. He was a stingy man.
Well, it's nice to be back, Jack, and I really don't know if many of you know that my start in show business came through Mr. Benny. It was,
Oh, don't.
Go ahead. Actually, it was Jack Benny who taught me how to walk and how to talk and stage presence.
Now, I understand that you're going to be here for 2 weeks to do your own show. Is that right?
That's right. I'm going to be here for 2 weeks, but I was hoping I could get someone to replace me, and I'd run over to Honolulu for a little run.
Well, that would be wonderful, Honolulu.
I don't know how to say this. I don't know how to say this. Well, I once replaced you. Why is it possible you'd replace me?
Well, I don't know how to say it. But I'll tell you something. I wouldn't do your show for anything in the world. 5 nights a week, an hour and 45 minutes each night. Why, this is an art in itself. I couldn't. I wouldn't be. You're the only guy that can do this.
Well, that's true. But I was afraid. I was afraid you'd say that. I knew you'd say that. And that's why I have my set backstage, and we could try it out.
A set? The set you use in New York?
We have it back there. We could try it out with your audience, and we'd see how it goes.
Oh, well, fine. Then we'll do it. Then I don't mind.
No. What? We're not going to walk in the set.
Oh.
We're not going to do that. We're going to have a theme and introduction like I have on my show.
Oh, well, then let's do it.
He set the tone for a lot of that, for the format, you know, the desk, the chair, the sofa, the monologue before and everything. And that was a formula that has been very long-lived because this was a long time ago.
Here are 2 incidents that happened to me, I kid you not, this week, Monday. I went to do Candid Camera, took Miriam and Randy, at the 53rd Street CBS Theater, and as we're coming out, it's raining. They have no hats on, they got their new dresses, and it's raining, and what a mess, 53rd Street at night. There's a cab there. What kind of luck is this? Hey! Well, there's an argument going on, and it's pretty rough. There's a couple of musicians who later recognized me, but they're really rough. And so I said, forgive me, but fight if you will, but is this cab, are you guys going or coming, you know? And he says, well, look, Jack, we're going to leave, but this clown here has no change. I said, what's the problem? He said, well, I said, watch your language, my wife's standing there. Yeah, I'm very prim that way. So I said, what's the problem? He says, well, I got a 5, this clown's got no change. So I looked in my pocket, I had a 20, a 10, and 5 ones. And I said, well, there's no problem. Give me your 5. Here are the 5 ones. Now pay him. I said, now look, you're both wrong. I'm always Dean Rusk. I'm always pointing the whole thing out. You're both wrong. You shouldn't get in a taxi with $5. And, sir, you should have change. Out. Miriam, Randy, in the car. I said, Trader Vic's. Off we go to Trader Vic's. And as we approach, it's 60 cents, and I realize we're right back where we were.
Jack was a great fan of Frank Fay. Frank Fay was a monologist in vaudeville. A rather disliked man, but a brilliant monologist. And then along came radio, and Bob Hope, of course, was the top monologist. And Bob did it in television, too. But then along came Jack. And Jack, I think, certainly is the premier monologist of our era.
But the funniest thing was down at the Coliseum last year, down near, 59th and 6th, and a fellow walked up, and this is sad. He had straggly hair, 2 teeth, one up and one down, unclean clothes, and there was a strong odor of wine about him. It was January, but there was a swarm of fruit flies around his head. But he said with great dignity, he said, I happen to be in town for the boat show. And I mislaid my wallet. Well, I thought that was...
The monologue was very important to Jack. He did it very well, and he did it very naturally, so that people at home got the sense that he was telling stories about himself, about things that had happened to him. And it was like having someone in your house, like Uncle Ned there, telling you what happened to him on the way over to dinner.
An ambition of my life was to be successful enough to buy a German Shepherd. And that's the greatest dog in the world, in my opinion. And I was able to buy one a couple of months ago. And I told you about saying to the dog, on the paper, but not when I'm reading it, you know. This is the most intelligent dog. German Shepherds, I mean, they don't do tricks like poodles. Poodles will do any little trick. German Shepherds read, they bake cakes, they do marvelous. And I can't discipline this dog because I love it so much, and I just can't make it behave because I love it so. Yesterday, I filled a swimming pool, and it was too cold to go in, so I was just sitting there with my feet in the water, thinking about what I'd say tonight. And the dog comes over with a ball. And I said, we've done that all day long. I've been throwing that silly ball. Now, I don't want to do it anymore. And she looks at me. She goes to the deep end of the pool and drops the ball in the water. And then as the ball floats out to the middle of the water, she begins to go crazy and bark, screaming, barking. I don't want the neighbors to complain. I dove in, got the ball, brought it back. I did that 3 times, and I said, there's something wrong in this relationship, you know. God didn't mean for me to go chase a ball for a dog.
Jack talked about his family. A lot of times the monologue would be stories about Miriam and Randy and things that happened in the neighborhood. And you could see by the stories he told that he was a good family man. He was a loving husband and father. And I think women like that about Jack.
May I tell you, I hope won't bore you. A story about my daughter. I'm very proud of her. She was 15 this week, and she's the only child we have. And she's a good child, and she's a good student. She speaks and reads French, and it's her whole life is studying. So she asked a favor. She wanted to go to dinner with the Robert Kennedys when they were in town last week. So her mother gave her, they're the same size now, the mother, and the dress gave her one of her evening gowns. And Randy's allowed to wear a little lipstick on occasion. And we went into a very fine restaurant here in New York with the Attorney General. I said, now, Randy, we expect the best manners, and you refer to him as Mr. Attorney General. But she's known him since he was an attorney on the Labor Committee and was Mr. Kennedy, and she hears me called Bob or something. It's Mr. Attorney General. So we arranged the sitting, and she sat next to Mr. Kennedy. She sat there, and she was talking very well about profiles and courage, and I was so proud. And she was eating a shrimp cocktail, as kids always do if you take them to a good restaurant. And we're so proud, Mr. Attorney General. And then I heard this, and her mother and I said, oh, my. She said, Mr. Attorney General, I have 2 shrimp left. Would you like them?
A guy told me that a company was going to merge with Procter & Gamble. He could tell from the way the labeling was going. And I should buy this stock. So that's all I need, you know. And I run down, and I have several hundred shares of the stock. And I have no idea what the company is. I just know the name, and I buy it. And it turns out that this was a gefilte fish company. It was called, I think, Rokesh Gefilte. Well, I ended up cornering the gefilte fish market. Now, what happened was, it was not merging with Procter & Gamble, as I found out. It was indeed, and this is the truth, merging with a brassiere company. It was the only stock that went up and out, as I remember at the time. And I don't know. So I was called out to the SEC, you know, the Security Exchange Commission, and I was put before the court. And what am I saying? This story's not true. And I said, well, it's true as far as I know. Well, in about 5 days in the paper, it all came out, and it was absolutely true. The gefilte fish company merged with the brassiere company. And to this day, I lost some money on the whole deal. But to this day, I couldn't understand what the point of it was. Unless somebody had some crazy idea of packaging or something. I mean, I just can't understand.
One of the things that I really respected was Jack's ability to take a kind of an idea that was half-formed and then work on it until it was a polished joke. And he would do that by, we would hear the joke, he would tell me the joke, and then I said, "Gee, that's nice. He's really confident that my opinion will mean something." And then I would see him down the hall, and he'd be talking to a stagehand, and he would be telling him the same joke, but slightly different. I would follow him around and see how the joke developed. And before he was finished, he maybe told the joke maybe 5 or 6 times. And after the 6th time, it was finished and it was ready. But he really, it was craftsmanship, joke craftsmanship, and he was very good at that.
This guy called his wife from his office, and she said, darling, I'm in the bathtub, and I'm standing here shivering, I'm in the nude, and let me finish the bath, and I'll call you back in 10 minutes. So the guy ran to his friend who knew the girl in his office. He said, call my wife right away. He gave the setup. So the friend called, and there he gets her. He says, hello, Helen. This is Mort. Helen, good grief, you're naked. You know, you can go like this, but with the telephone, you got
to... The fun of working with Jack every day was that each day was different. I never knew what was going to happen that day, so therefore I didn't prepare, because you couldn't prepare.
So he didn't rely on a monologue by rote so much as just by freewheeling, and it was really freewheeling at the time.
He's the best monologist, or has been the best, because of there's a straightforward way of saying it, setting up the joke, telling the joke, but then there's that twinkle, there's that little sly thing behind it. There's, you know, I'm kidding, folks, but you know, I'm not really kidding. He's really a master at it.
My staff was very small, and the idea was we had a little money, and I would dole it out for them to go out at night and go to all the little clubs in the village and look for singers and comedians and whatever. And then we heard about a young man named Jim Henson who was in Washington, and we brought him up, and that was the beginning of the Muppets. And that's history, isn't it?
Jack also was able, in the booking of guests, he had a really wide range from top showbiz people or people he thought had merit and he could launch. Woody Allen was one of those. Woody Allen came on to show what a pundit I am. When Woody Allen was on, he had a couple of things that were so sophisticated, I thought, this is very funny, but it'll never go with a mass audience. How wrong I was.
Around 2 years ago, I was home alone in my house. I called a meeting of my possessions. You'll think this is weird. I got everything that I own, my toaster, my clock, and my blender, you know, and I got them in the living room. And I spoke to them. They had never been in the living room before, you know. And I was delightful. You would have loved me. I opened with a joke, you know. And I spoke to each appliance, you know, and I said, I know what's going on, you know, like, don't do it again. I was very firm. And then I put them back in the house, and I felt great and masculine. And around 2 days later, I'm watching my portable television set, Dr. Joyce Brothers. And the set begins to jump up and down fast. So I always talk before I hit, you know. And I went up to it, I was very decent, and I said to the set, I was home alone, I thought we had discussed this, you know. What is the trouble? I was really great. And the set kept going up and down very fast, you know, so I kicked it. And I liked kicking it. And I kicked it again, and I beat the heck out of the set. You know, I just killed it. I tore off the antenna, you know, and ripped off the knobs, and I was really vicious, and I crushed it. Just great. And I felt Hemingway, you know, and virile. A week later, I go to my dentist. I had gone to my dentist, but I had a very deep cavity, and he had sent me to a chiropodist to begin work on it. I go into a downtown store, and they got those elevators now. So I walk in, and I hear a voice say, "Kindly call out your floors, please." You know, so I'm hip now, because I was to the coast, you know. And I say, 16. And the doors close, and the elevator goes to 16. And on the way up, the elevator says to me, "Are you the guy that hit the television set?" I felt like an ass, you know, and it went up and down very fast between floors, and it threw me off in the basement, and it yelled out something that was anti-Semitic.
A lot of people who started talk about their roots in other places, but actually it was on the Tonight Show that they got their start, or on the Friday night show.
I loved making people laugh. We found Carol Burnett in some club downtown. Bob Newhart we heard about from a magazine article in Chicago. He was a bookkeeper. The Smothers Brothers, who are now my dear friends. Nichols and May, they had just come from Chicago, and we auditioned them in the lobby of the theater in the afternoon because by the union they wouldn't put the lights on. Phyllis Diller, we found her in a small club. Then many came from the theater, like Hermione Gingold, and Dodie had been a chorus girl, and Genevieve was just a singer in some little club, and that's more or less how we did it.
Jack was fascinated by a young comic named Godfrey Cambridge, who did material directly related to how he saw himself in a white society as a black man. And the jokes were very smart, very nice. And we auditioned them, and Jack liked the jokes. And then Jack, after the audition, said, "You know, I'd like to know how this kind of stuff goes down with a black audience. I mean, he comes on the show, it's going to be a white audience, mostly white audience, and he said, I'd like to, why don't we go to a place where we'll find a black audience and have him do his routine and tape it and see what happens." So we did. We went down to Morgan State, Black University in the South, and Godfrey did his routine. Well, I've never seen such a reaction. I mean, it was just one giant laugh after another.
When I just got out of college, I was wearing like my 12-button suit, you know, and the attaché case. And I was looking for a job, you know, and I ran into this cat in the lobby of this building in Park Avenue, and there he was, my soul brother, sweeping and mopping the floor, you know, but I was very glad to see him, and I walked up to him and I said, my man, I said, could you tell me where I could find the personnel office? And he said, we don't hire colors. I'm here. I ran into this cat going back to the suburbs in the afternoon with his overalls and his attaché case. And he had his very thin umbrella, and he sat down next to this white bejeweled dowager. And they were heading up there to Scarsdale, and as he sat down next to her, she went, "Oh, colored people." And he said, "Colored people? Where? When he goes to the store to buy a watermelon, he is so ashamed he tells the man, "Wrap it up." Put handles on it. You meet him on the street and say, "Hey, baby, what you got there?" He says, "Oh, I got my bowling ball." Have you ever seen an oblong bowling ball? I don't blame people for not wanting us to live in their neighborhoods, because we have a very high crime rate. All the big criminals is colored. Al Capone was colored.
It was the beginning of Godfrey Cambridge's career, and it got a lot of notice in the press. And I think it was the first time we had other black comics on. Bill Cosby was an early stand-up comic. But his material was more family-oriented. It wasn't about the black experience. I think that was the big thing. That was the different thing. And Jack was willing to give it a try. And I think he had kind of an idea of how that would work with his audience.
I want to talk to you about a fellow by the name of Noah, who built an ark. Now, everybody knows, you ask a question, say, what did Noah do? They say, well, he built an ark. But very few people know about the actual conversation that went on between the Lord and Noah. You see, Noah was a carpenter, and he was in his rec room sawing away, making a few things for the home there. Hooba, 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 Noah. Hooba, 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 Noah. Who is that? It's the Lord, Noah. Right. Where are you? What do you want? I've been good. I want you to build an ark. Right. What's an ark?
I was about 26 years old, fresh out of Temple University. It was in the 60s. It was before I Spy. And here is a Negro coming out, and this Negro is not going to talk about get in the back of the bus or jokes about I'm black and you're white and the problems in the society. This is a young college-educated Negro who's going to come out and he's going to talk about life.
Am I on candid camera? How you gonna do it? Want to make it rain for 1,000 days and drown them out? Right. Listen, do this, you'll save water. Let it rain for 40 days and 40 nights and wait for the sewers to back up. Right.
If you got on the Jack Paar show, if you performed well, it opened up all of the nightclubs for you to play. And whether it was Mr. Kelly's in Chicago, whether it was the Hungry Eye in San Francisco, and these are the things that, in order to make it, these are the clubs you have to play. So that when Jack Paar put the stamp on you and said, ladies and gentlemen, here's a fine young comedian, Bill Cosby, I mean, that was it for you. You could name your booking. And that was the first thing they put on the piece of cardboard with your name and your picture, you know. Recently seen on the Jack Paar show. I mean, that gave you that credibility. People, oh, he's on the Paar show, okay, buy a ticket.
But there's one last thing I want to talk to you about back in history, and that is the musket. And a musket is a gun that had to be loaded a weird kind of way. It's not like today when the guys have guns, automatic, pop, 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 pop things. This was like a one load, one shot, load up again thing. And it must have been funny to watch something like the Revolutionary War where one man is shooting against another. And it must have looked exactly like this.
But I think I was the first one that really didn't do anything except come out, be young, and say, here's the coming of a new age of comedians.
Hawaii, the 50th state. Certainly the friendliest state in our nation. Very sensitive about being called a state. If you refer to the United States when you're in Hawaii, you offend people.
After the first 6 months or so, the show kind of caught on. I wanted to move out of the studio. I didn't want to sit there forever and just do the same thing every night. I really, really worried about entertaining people. And I had an enormous loyalty to those who were watching. So I said, okay, let's travel this show. Let's go somewhere. And we had a very small budget, but we were very cheap about how we spent the money. So we went to Hawaii.
I saw my name. You simply wouldn't believe some of the places I saw my name. This show will be shown in the United States on Wednesday night. That is tonight Tuesday, dear? It's Monday, isn't it? You've been drinking. Now, come on. It's still Monday. But it'll... What? What did I say? You said we'll be showing in the United States. Oh, I'm sorry. We'll be showing on the mainland. Boy, are these converts touchy. Listen, I want to... You know, last night, out of some nervous thing and not being acquainted with the customs here, I referred to the mainland always as the United States, and I meant no slight to any of you. It's just that I'm not familiar with all of the terms. And then, of course, as a world traveler, I think of everything that's tied down and anchored as the United States. And it's hard for me coming from cold New York to realize that you people, happy people running around in your pajamas, are now a state, you know. Mind you, not that I'm against your luva-luvas or your moo-moo-moos or these crazy shirts, you know, but you all look like you've been evicted in the middle of the night, you see. You know, you're the only state that's ever joined us in your underwear. You know that. Madrid. Wonderfully warm people. As a matter of fact, several of my Spanish friends are here this evening. And I always believe in mingling with the native peoples and becoming a part of them. I try not to be conspicuous. I want to be part of the group. There's my daughter. And there's the boy that you've seen before somewhere. But I tried it the next day myself. About 40 miles out of Madrid, there's a little bull ring where nuts like me can go. I really was a little scared because I didn't know quite where the bull was going to begin. That's a Barrera. You hide behind that when a bull comes for you. But Charlie's... Don't get behind the thing. That scared me. I had
it there. The logistics part of it was never on his mind. He only thought about what was interesting to him. So what you were getting was really cameras and technical people looking on as Jack lived his life.
Buddy Hackett and his wife Sherry, and Hans Conrad and his wife and 2 children, and Miriam and Randy and I all left for the Orient, and we met in Japan.
Yeah,
and
Tokyo.
We have some, I think, amusing and exciting films of Japan, and I'd like to show them to you now.
There's us.
There I am wearing my Guadalcanal makeup. And there's Conrad, Hans Conrad. He looks like a Japanese giraffe, doesn't he? He can get Channel 13 on his head alone there. It's a silly little scene. They treated us great, Buddy and myself. We told them we were Huntley and Brinkley. And the Japanese were just great to us. This is karate. This is the deadliest form of open-hand fighting in the world. It comes from Okinawa. These are 3 single 1-inch pine boards, not cracked. This is an onsen. This is a Japanese bath.
Oh, that's why I promised the audience I was going to go naked. You remember that?
Well, Hans and I were a little embarrassed because you do undress in front of the women. This kills me. You know, Conrad, who's so dignified, you know. He looks like a poetic sheep herder, you know. Oh, there he is. So they rinsed him off, and he got in the tub, and he stuck there, and Hans and I had to rock him back and forth to break the suction to get him out of there. You are a fat little devil. You know that.
That's where you get 2 girls, Jeff.
We had some free time, and Jack wanted to go to London to survey for a show we would do there. We didn't know who was going to be on the show, but Jack loved London. He was an Anglophile. He loved being in London. He loved being in England. And we went over and talked about what we would do. Actually, we were just there to have some good meals and see theater and have a good time. And then Jack, at dinner one day, said, you know, I just read this. I read this piece about Randolph Churchill, and God, I'd like to have him on the show. And then he said, you know, Judy's in town, and I can always get Bob Morley. And he said, well, what are we going back to New York? Let's do the show now. And I looked at him and said, my God, Jack, we're not ready. This is just a survey. And then I realized he was being Mickey Rooney. It's like, remember Mickey Rooney in this film would say, hey, we could do the show right here.
And now, here's Jack.
That's very kind of you. That's what I like, that warm British indifference, you know. I think it's very charming. I must admit to you that unlike my show back in the States, I am nervous because I am not known in this country to most of you at all. Look at it this way. I'm an exchange student for Richard Burton, kind of living. And I don't know if it'll help any if I told you that my great-great-grandfather deserted at Valley Forge. That might help us a little bit tonight. But I must say this. It is almost impossible to dislike me because I do nothing. Oh, you do know me, then.
We threw a show together, and it was with Judy. And Judy came, I love her, and she's a dear friend. It's funny as hell, but you'll see that the speech was a little slurred.
There you are, sweetie. How nice. Now, everyone, and we haven't seen you for 7 months.
I know.
And they love you here. They've been good to you, huh?
Huh?
They've been good to you here at the
Oh, they're always marvelous to me.
At the Palladium?
Yeah.
You love the Palladium?
I love the Palladium. I love London.
Tell me, I see, they don't understand how we do the show. We just keep talking with no
know.
script.
It's agony.
You were telling me, was it last night we were talking about Marlena's album? That is a funny story.
I don't mean this harshly. However, I was in Paris with some friends. I was with Noel Coward and Jeanette Spanier and her husband, and we were just sitting around in Jeanette and her husband's sitting room, and in came Marlena, and she'd been doing a tour of, oh my goodness, many
Moscow,
countries.
Denmark.
And she came in with a great big record, you know, bigger than a 12-inch. It was about a... And she said, oh, darling, hello. How... Would anybody like to hear my record? So we all said, sure, we'd like to hear your record. What are we going to say? No, we don't want to hear your record. Of course we'd like to hear your record. There were just 4 of us there. Marlena was 5. So she put the record on, and it was just applause.
She jumped around and showed you the applause. And the
Well, she'd show me, you know, sometimes the applause would vary. That, and then she'd say, that's Frankfurt. It'd be like that. And then there'd be great, ah! And that's Berlin. And, you know, but not one note of music. She didn't sing. There was no orchestra, just applause. And Noel turned to me in the middle and said, I hope there isn't another side to this. And there was.
Jack could jump on a situation and make it work for him. What other people say, well, let's go back and think it over. Let's get a script. Let's get some writers working on this. Let's get some sets built. And that's not the way we did that show. And it was one of the best things we've ever done.
I was also interested in serious things. I did not do a show to have a bunch of funny people say funny things. That wasn't my idea of what the Tonight Show should be. And I remember one time I was flying with my wife out of Hawaii.
I'm singularly blessed with a wife who is a very charming girl, very intelligent girl, and she suffers from claustrophobia. Seriously, this is true. You may have friends or loved ones that suffer from this. My wife cannot be put in a Pullman, for instance, on a train, or a small compartment on a train. But we were taking a plane one day last summer. We were going from Honolulu to Maui. This little Commander, Aero Commander, it seats 5 people, and we're flying up, leaving Honolulu, and flying, and I saw that look in her eye, and I had forgotten it's a very small plane, it seats 5 people. She turned to me, and she said, keep reading to me. And I said, why, she's distract me. So I'm reading the one ads like crazy, you know, Honolulu sales. She says, I have to get out, Jack, I have to get out. Well, what am I going to do when this is... So I tapped this Japanese pilot on the shoulder, and I said, she has to get out, you know. And he gives me that look of, oh, boy. Well, anyhow, I said, can we go down? What's the nearest place? We've got to get out of here. And he said, down here, we can go there. And there down I looked, and we're over a little island, and there's a little airstrip. I said, where is that? He said, that's Molokai. And Molokai, all of the history of Molokai came back to me. Molokai is the famous leper colony. And I said, I've always wanted to see this place. I know all about Father Damien, and I read Robert Louis Stevenson when I was a kid about the story, and Ernie Pyle's stories about the lepers on Molokai. I want to come back here. So we went on 10 minutes away. We distracted Miriam and got her there, and then we made arrangements to go back. Now, when you go there, you're sterilized. You're fumigated, you're closed. And they're so charming, these people. Whenever they open a doorknob, they'll use a piece of Kleenex so that you don't touch the doorknob. And if you unconsciously say, hello, I'm Jack Paar, or shake your hands, they'll withdraw it, and they'll make an excuse like, oh, I was on the mimeograph machine, and I have ink on my hands. They're always trying to save you the embarrassment. It attacks the extremities of the body, the fingers, the nose, the ears, the toes. And it is the most frightening thing. The reason I show it to you now is it's a hopeful thing. Thanks to the sulfone drugs, leprosy is ended in our time. But in 1873, a brave young Belgian priest named Damagnan Dubaster volunteered to spend his life serving the more than 700 lepers abandoned here at Molokai. When Father Damien arrived, he was stunned by the conditions: starvation, crime, immorality, drunkenness, all bred by the horror of complete despair. He brought order, peace, spiritual comfort, better food, water and housing, and hope. At each Mass, Father Damien would address the patients, my dear brethren. But then one morning in 1885, this 45-year-old priest began in a calm, clear voice, my fellow lepers, I am one of you now. This cross marks Father Damien's grave near his church. His body was removed in 1936 and entombed in a shrine near his home in Belgium. The cheerful patients strolling past his old church today reflect the heritage of Father Damien. The light of Father Damien, the martyr of Molokai, still shines today on this island, a beacon in a world that sometimes seems to be filled with too much darkness. His millions of admirers the world over hope that one day the Roman Catholic Church will declare him a saint. Dr. Billy Graham.
It's always a joy to have you, old friend.
Thank you, Jack, and that was a very moving film you had a moment ago. On Molokai.
I know you've been near it.
I've flown right down over it. In fact, I looked into that mountain last year when I was sick for so long and saw that leprosarium. It's really a moving thing.
It's wonderful in Africa now, too. You know, we're sending sulfone drugs to Dr. Schweitzer in Gabon, and leprosy's...
You know, that's one of the things, really, Jack, that I like about your program. You not only have the variety and show and entertainment, but you have serious things like that, and I think that makes your program. And that's the thing that so many people, I think, want in this particular day when we've had so many tragedies and disappointments and...
Are you
so much
criticized
trouble in
for
the
coming
world.
on the show by the more devout? You say, what are you doing?
There
with
are a
it?
few people that criticize me, but I always tell them that Christ went among the publicans and sinners, and I can come with Jack Paar.
In the Army, Jack did monologues, did them very well. He didn't do sketch comedy. When we transferred to the civilian life, and we went on radio as the Jack Benny replacement show, that was the form then that he did his monologue, and brilliantly, but he had to play in sketches. And I don't think he was as comfortable in sketches as he was with the monologue. I think it evolved. I think that after he did quiz shows and all, I think it began to grow. The art of conversation began to grow. And it reached a brilliant peak on The Tonight Show. Those who have followed, I mean, Carson was able to do it, but nobody's been able to have the wit and the art of listening, the art of feeding, the way Jack did on that show.
Well, what is this new Jane Mansfield thing? Well, I mean, why?
Well, very
Are you serious?
Yes, I am quite serious. I have been very fortunate in being exposed as a glamour girl for quite a few years.
Yes, I see that.
And... me, I'm sorry. There goes my new image.
No, but how can you change? It's like trying to hide a parachute, you know. I mean... You obviously have never had the rickets, you know, and so why do you want to be more serious? You find the caricature is kind of wearing thin? Is that what you mean?
It's so very difficult to be serious with you, but I'm going to make a very, very, very definite try here. I am quite fortunate in having built up an image being... You're not going to give me a chance, are you?
I haven't said a word. You're having trouble debating with yourself, that's all right.
Just the way you look at me, I don't know. But
Well, you're wearing high dresses now, aren't you?
Am I?
Well, that's high for you, honey. I've seen you when you looked. I thought you were skipping rope for a while. Tell me something. Do you wear that inside or outside the sheets? I'd like to know that. Do you wear that inside or outside the sheets?
What do you mean?
In the bed. Do you petit...
Oh, so sometimes go into inside, sometimes outside. I don't know. I'm sleeping, you know.
Now, stand up once, darling. Stand up, please.
Yes.
What do you call this lovely thing? Is this OB or what do you call that?
Coat.
Oh.
When I'm asked about who were the favorites of mine for conversation, and I have to say that it was mostly the British. They use the language better than we do. They love the play on words, and I find them fascinating.
And I've found...
Jack,
sex is funny? Yes. Uproariously funny. Jack, you giggle a lot, too? Are you a giggler? The thing is, it's inherently funny. It's a funny idea. It's a funny way of reproducing the species. The whole operation is funny, from beginning to end, in my opinion. Well, I prefer to sitting on an egg, to tell you the truth. I bet you've never tried that.
We began to look for sophisticated people, and then you turn to the theater. And I remember one night, a fella came backstage, about my age, but he had a beard. And he had a show on Broadway called Romanoff and something like that. And his press agent was saying, would you help him? And I said, yeah, I'll help him if I can. But I said, you know, this show is caught on now, and I got to be careful who I put on. And what is it you would do? What would you say? And he said, well, I'll think of something. And of course, that was Peter Ustinov.
You saw Peter in Quo Vadis and you saw him in Spartacus. But I love a story that Peter told me once about Olivier. Do you mind doing that story? The one about Olivier? You remember the story? You're going to do a medley of your stories.
Yes, well,
They're all true, but they're marvelous. Go ahead.
This is one scene in Spartacus, the first time I ever worked with Sir Lawrence Olivier, and I had to run up, according to the script, seize the reins of his horse, and say to him, divinity, if I identify Spartacus for you, will you give me the women and the children? And according to the script, he had to say, Spartacus, you found him. And according to the script again, I had to say yes. That was the end of the scene. So the first rehearsal, I rushed up, caught the reins of the horse and said, divinity, if I identify Spartacus for you, will you give me the women and the children? And Larry Olivier on the horse said, Spartacus? You have found him? So I said, he said, can't you come in a little faster with your yes? I said, no.
See, superstars in Hollywood, their PR people talk for them. They don't go on late shows and expose themselves to getting caught in some kind of a line. And Benny was the first to bring them. Jack Benny was the first to come. And then the powerhouses, Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Burton came on. It was just a marvelous time.
Tell me about the time you first met him when he came to see you at the old... Was it the old Vic at Hamlet when you were doing Hamlet?
Yes.
Excuse me. You want a drink?
No, thanks, no. My sister's watching.
Jack was curious about what they did. So they would, if they had something to talk about, they would go on and on and on. And Jack was fascinated. In fact, we'd have to blow whistles and fire off pistols to get them to throw to a commercial.
In came the director of the theater and said, do be good tonight. He said, because the old man's in front. Now, the old man means only one person to us in Britain, and possibly to you, too, and that is Winston Churchill. I said, what do you mean? He said, he's in front. He's in the front row. And I panicked, and I turned the cold tap on in the faucet, as you call it, and put my head in the thing to bring myself to my senses. And my hair stood up like this. And I may not have been the best Hamlet in the world, but I was the most soaking wet, I can tell you that. Anyway, I went on to the stage, and with my hair now smarmed down with grease, and I started to play the part. And I heard this dull rumble from the front row of the stalls. I thought, what on earth is that? Well, it was Churchill speaking the lines with me. And I could not shake him off. I tried going fast, I tried going slow, we did cuts. And every time there was a cut, an explosion occurred.
He knew that he knew you would cut, and he'd have to catch up with you again.
Oh, yes, he knew the play absolutely backwards. I think he knows about perhaps a dozen of Shakespeare's plays intimately, so I'm told by his secretary.
And how did it all end? Then you thought he'd...
Well, generally you can't keep him for more than one act, but I looked through the spy hole, and he got up from his seat, and I thought, that's it, we've lost him. But indeed, there he was suddenly. He'd come backstage, and he said, "My Lord Hamlet, may I use your bathroom?" And he did.
He did.
An hour and 45 minutes is a long, long time. And that was how the original Tonight Show that I did lasted for over 5 years in that form. When Johnny took it, he was able to cut it down. I wish I had been able to, but I never thought of it that way. The idea I had, and I kept, was I wanted it to feel like theater, not to be out of its time and place. It was at 11:15 to 1. I was very conscious of the time, and I asked people to speak softly. I fought when they raised the level of the commercials. That's a shock, because most people were watching it in bed or in their dens.
He was one of the early ones that realized we weren't broadcasting to ladies and gentlemen. We were broadcasting to individuals in their living room or in their bed. And that intimacy, I think, and coupled with the reality, was a real pioneering force in how television operates. He set that tone.
I suppose some of you see The Tonight Show with some regularity, and you're surprised to see me in person because you watch me in bed through your feet. And you're under the impression that I'm a tall, thin guy with 11 noses.
The combinations of guests, often the juxtaposition would be just inherently funny in itself. And Jack could exploit that very well, too. And he'd put the spotlight on the guest. He wasn't trying to just put it on himself.
Listen, why don't you play for him? You'd rather play than fight with him, wouldn't you?
Oh, listen, I'm a lover, not a fighter.
Well, why don't you play and let Cassius? Because if you can't fight, if it doesn't work out, you can always get a job with Burma Shave. I think the way with us rhyming.
Would you like me to play?
Yeah, that'd be a beautiful combination.
All right.
And Cassius play.
All right. Move that way a little bit. You're standing in front of my candelabra. Well, you recite something and I'll make up the music to it. For a change, do the one about you.
This is the legend of Cassius Clay, the most beautiful fighter in the world today. He talks a great deal and brags indeedy of a muscular punch that's incredibly speedy. The fistic world was dull and weary. With a champ like Liston, things had to be dreary. Then someone with color, someone with dash, brought fight fans a running with cash. This brash young boxer is something to see, and the heavyweight championship is his destiny. This kid fights great. He's got speed and endurance. But if you sign to fight him, increase your insurance.
Jack was so good at talking to people and convincing them that he was interested in what they had to say. They opened up and they said things they would never say. I've heard people say things that they regretted the rest of their lives because Jack has that ability to do that.
And the question then is Hoffa an improvement over Dave Beck?
Oh, there's no comparison between Mr. Hoffa and Mr. Beck. Mr. Beck was just a thief. I mean, this is not...
We may be in court together, you and I. I hope the hell you know what you're doing, because I don't...
It was an election year, and Jack reached out and offered John F. Kennedy, would he like to come on for as a guest interview? And he told him he would be inviting also Richard Nixon. And John Kennedy, rest his soul, he accepted. And he was charming. He was wonderful. He was funny. He was breezy. He was one of the most important men in the world. And it opened up a new thing for Jack.
May I ask you, so that I don't look too naive,
A tough question right off the bat?
And whether I'm a Democrat or Republican?
Hey, would it be rude of me if I called you John?
That'd be fine.
Because if you make it, it would be nice for my daughter to know that. We have a small arrangement, you know. Well, we got a best audience we've had in here in a long time, Barry.
That's the best show you've had in a long time.
Paar did not have a particular political or ideological axe to grind. But he did, in exposing all of these persuasions, he educated the people more than they are now educated by television with these phony debates, which aren't really debates, and the paid political announcements, which are an abomination. I long for the Tonight Show, that atmosphere, because I think the public learned more about politicians then than they are able to now in our medium. And Jack was responsible for a lot of that.
Mr. Nixon plays the piano, see. Anyhow, I heard some time ago from a friend of his that he wrote a selection, he wrote a composition. And we had, would you bring a piano on here if we can do this? We had Mrs. Nixon, Pat, had a tape recorder going one afternoon, and she quietly said to Mr. Nixon, why don't you play that old piece? And she recorded it. Now, that's okay. Mr. Nixon is aware of that. This is not what you call one of those trick surprises. But the funny thing is, we have hired about 15 Democratic violinists to fill out the... We're spending more money for this orchestra than we ever spent in our life, and Jose has made a concerto arrangement of this hinky-dinky song that you wrote. Would you play it for it?
Jack, let me say this. You asked a moment ago whether...
You have a title?
You asked a moment ago whether I had any future political plans to run for anything. And if last November didn't finish it, this will, because, believe me, the Republicans don't want another piano player in the White House.
After the assassination of the president, Robert Kennedy just disappeared. Nobody could get to him. He didn't talk, no interviews, nothing. 1 month. Everybody wondered how would Bobby come out of this. And one day I got a phone call. Jack, yes, Bob Kennedy. Bob. He said, look, he could be very, very tough when he wanted something. And he said, I got to come out of this. I've got to appear somewhere. I've got to start acting a normal life again. And I have to do it in some dramatic way, I guess. And he said, I've chosen to come with you. Would that be all right? Well, it'd be all right. It'd be a story, a big, big story for me. And he said, well, I've always been at ease with you, and we're friends, and okay, when do you want me? I said, do you want to come tonight, you know?
I feel deeply honored tonight to share some of that lifetime with you and to discuss it with a man whose own life reminds us of what brother really means, the distinguished Attorney General of the United States, Mr. Robert Kennedy.
a great honor to have you here, sir.
Thank you.
Well, wait till the folks just sit down quietly for a moment, and then we're just going to talk about... I know the thing closest to your heart at this very moment is the Memorial Library. And may I just ask some personal questions about how is Mrs. Kennedy, Mrs. John Kennedy?
She's fine, really, making a adjustment and doing it well. She spends most all of her time with her children now, and I think she's making a good deal of progress.
What do you think, sir, was your brother's greatest contribution?
Well, I think really he made Americans feel young again.
Yes.
And I think that he gave all of us more confidence in the country, more confidence in the struggles that we're involved in internally and externally will be successful, more confidence in our efforts with those who are opposed to us. I think also he gave great confidence in people who lived in other countries, great confidence in the United States and in its leadership, and that we were dedicated to certain principles and ideals, and that we would live up to them and, if necessary, fight for them. And so that I think it changed over a period of years, that our own feelings as well as the feelings of other peoples around the world.
If you'll watch carefully now, you'll see an elephant playing his little game of throwing mud. I had no idea I was about to become the target, or I certainly would not have been standing there carrying a $3,000 movie camera and wearing my favorite safari jacket. There.
He loves Africa. If they could put in a commuter train, Jack would sleep every night in Africa and come back for breakfast.
I don't know where an elephant goes to die, but I hope it's near a dry cleaner's. They say an elephant never forgets. Well, I won't either, Jumbo.
The most enjoyable trips I made with my family were those to Africa. I was there 9 times in East Africa, Uganda, and Tanzania, which I was there when they called it Tanganyika. And then I made the trip to West Africa to see Dr. Schweitzer. But I had done, I don't know how many documentaries. I wrote and produced documentaries in Africa. I think I did 3 shows.
The remarkable thing about traveling in Africa is you can travel for days and see absolutely nothing. I mean, you can just up and down these small, dirty roads, and you see nothing. Have you noticed that?
Since we believe in both ecology and brotherhood, the Pars have started their own movement called Take a Lion to Lunch. She's been picked for the part of Elsa, the most famous lion in the world, for the motion picture sequel to Born Free. Miriam, my wife, has a wonderful relationship with Lion, but she has had much experience raising cubs. In the training sessions, I was not, as you can see, so successful. I really love lions. They seem to like me, but we never, as they say, have a meaningful relationship.
I think they really saw somebody like themselves, like a home movie. People called it home movies. Well, they were like home movies, but they had the same enthusiasm, the same quirkiness, and the same charm that you get when you go out and enjoy yourself and record it. And that's what Jack was doing.
Boy. Oh, yeah.
If you know Jack, you know that he doesn't hide anything. He doesn't hold anything back. He wouldn't know how to. If it's on his mind, it's going to be on the screen.
I've never been, on my word of honor, mixed up in any partisan politics on one side or the other. That's true. As a matter of fact, I feel very much like the little old lady in Maine who said, "I never vote, it only encourages them."
Well, the program was controversial for one reason, I know, is because personal grievances Jack aired, you know, and if a columnist slammed him some way or did something really unfair, Jack would cross swords with them.
There was Walter Winchell, of course, and Dorothy Kilgallen, and Ed Sullivan. Well, the Ed Sullivan thing started about bookings. I think Ed kind of leaned on the guest, saying, if you do the show, do the Tonight Show, you're not going to do my show until a certain amount of time passes. And then that turned into kind of a weekly little exchange. And finally Jack had Ed Sullivan on, and then all was, they liked each other. There was, and I think it was just a matter of, again, Jack speaking out. I mean, it was in the press. Jack didn't have to say anything about it, but he did.
He clashed with some people in other media at times, and I think showed the power of television, because up to that time that Jack started that show, Walter Winchell was a power that everybody was terrified of. And Jack Paar proved he was a paper tiger by taking him on.
Walter Winchell was the most powerful man in the business. He could put a one-line blurb and a new career would be born overnight. He put another blurb in and the career could end overnight.
He and Elsa Maxwell got into a tiff. She had said that Walter Winchell never voted. Well, I didn't give a damn whether he voted or not. Doesn't matter to me. But he couldn't hit back at Elsa because they worked for the same Hearst Corporation, King Features Syndicate. So he started attacking me, and I was not involved in this.
Winchell made some snide remark about Jack, and Jack responded the next night, and people, you could almost hear people go, huh, my God, he's talking about Winchell.
And once he had looked like he wasn't going to kowtow to Walter Winchell, Winchell started slashing him, and he started slashing back and really effectively destroyed Winchell.
I just simply pulled the hat down over his ears a few times, and I think the last night I was on, my daughter told me that I pulled it down so far over his ears, he's been wearing a brim on his hips for 6 months, so...
Jack was getting to the audience, and Winchell couldn't, Winchell wasn't getting the support he thought he would get in attacking Jack, and I think it was the first time that Winchell had been challenged and lost.
I mean, I can't very well attack Winchell. There's nothing left to attack. You understand that, you see. But I imagine Mr. Winchell sitting there making notes with his crayon. I don't honestly dislike him, or anyone really. It would be foolish of me.
It proved that a nightly television itself was the new power. Print journalism had seen its day.
I'm leaving the Tonight Show. There must be a better way of making a living than this. You have been peachy to me always.
It was making a very mild joke on the confusion between Water Closet WC, Wayfair Chapel WC. So you can see the opportunity to make kind of snide little jokes.
It was a harmless joke. As everyone knows now, it was a mistake. They never should have cut it. Did they have the right to cut it? Oh, absolutely. We edited things every night. But what they did, or this idiot executive did, he put in a news broadcast. Well, it alerted the entire country that something happened, because it never had happened before. And so that's what I was upset about, because I knew it was not obscene, but that's how the word spread. Every paper in the country, obscene, front page, obscene, obscene. Now, I had a daughter in a very good school up here in Westchester, and I don't want my daughter to have to walk around and kids talk about obscenities. So I called Mr. Kittner, as he's the president of NBC. He said, Jack, it's not obscene. I said, I'll tell you what, if you don't think it's obscene, then tonight, that's the next night, I want to run that, and that will stop it. They'll see what it was, and there'll be no more talk. At 6, he called and said, Jack, I can't do it. I can't let you do it. It looks like you're running the corporation. He said, it was a corporate decision, and it looks now like you can change a corporate decision. I don't want you to run it. And I said, Mr. Kittner, that's unacceptable to me. It's not fair. And I have a surprise for you.
That night, we did the show. We started the show. Jack came out and talked for about 2 or 3 minutes and said, I'm leaving the Tonight Show. Well, there's this gasp in the audience. I'm sure a gasp all around America.
I thought it was the end of my career. I had made this was the only thing I'd done that really was successful and really had a future, and maybe I could make some money this time. And you want to know what I felt? I felt that was the end. That was it. I'd have to do something else, maybe go back to some small station and be a disc jockey or something.
Here they have a show, their hottest show, their moneymaker, their bottom line. The guy who was in charge of it, Jack Paar, has just left.
2 days later, I believe it was, I was out on this veranda wondering, what the hell am I going to do now? Where am I going to go? What can I do? And I saw a big limousine driving down at this dusty road. And as I looked, I thought, God, it's the press. I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm not going to say a word. So I began to run. And 2 men got out of the car and ran after me. I thought it was the press. It was Bob Kintner and Bob Sarnoff. They had flown down, and they chased me, and we went into an empty motel room. And we negotiated this on the bed, in this little dinky place.
The newspaper headlines were full of the story. Newspapers were full of the story for a couple of weeks. And then when Jack came back, I think it was the biggest audience we had.
One, here's Jack! As I was saying before I was interrupted, I believe my last words were that there must be a better way of making a living than this. Well, I have looked. And there isn't.
I think really he had done the quintessential Tonight Show. He moved on to do a brilliant variety show that had great quality. And what was the next plateau?
He'd worked as hard as any man ever could work on a show. The last 3 years were easier, but they kept him in town.
It took its toll. I mean, Jack did the Tonight Show for 5 years, and then he felt he was burnt out, that he had done it, he had gone through, each these controversies. They may get you ratings, they may give you satisfaction that you've convinced somebody of your point of view, but they take a toll.
What's a Tonight Show like? Well, sometimes it's great fun, and sometimes it's sad, and sometimes it's frightening. It's a traumatic experience to do that show. That's a psychiatric term I learned. A traumatic experience means that I not only have a hole in my head, but when the wind blows, I hear flutes.
That was an exciting show. You never knew what was going to happen, and it always did, every night.
Really? Smoking?
It's a new one. It's a new smoking.
Do they?
Yeah, were you in this rough on Fisher? Oh, my papa.
I'll get you.
When we were kittens, you were mine. Today, give me
I've been wanting to leave television for quite a long while. The only reason I've stayed around all these years is because I didn't have a big finish for my act. Come to think of it, I never really had a beginning either. But this is the last show for perhaps ever, I don't know. Some people I know expect a tearful farewell, and others, I'm sure, gleefully expect me to take a jab at the network or swing at some newspaper. I'm going to disappoint both of you tonight. The thing that I've enjoyed the most these past 8 years is the opportunity to have gone so many places and seen so many things that were only a dream to a skinny, stuttering, unschooled boy raised in Jackson, Michigan. My hope then, dream, was just to get as far as Detroit. Well, I was lucky. I got a few places besides Detroit.
He became the favorite of the people just by showing up and doing what he was. He never made any speeches. He never defined himself. He let it show.
And that, I think, led people to say, what is Jack Paar really like? Because he really was like what you saw. And you didn't see that on television until Jack put it on. And it was a real person. He's really like the person you see on the screen. That's Jack Paar. There's no, and I don't know why people didn't see that, because it's so apparent to me that the guy lived his life on the screen.
But he'll never be forgotten as long as I can remember. He was the man that said, I want this fellow on because he's funny.
What he did better than anybody else. There was nothing more exciting in late-night television in that era.
He is a very rare man who was a very rare personality. And he just hit all the nerve buttons that people like. And they trusted him and they liked him. And there aren't many of them around.
There are great opportunities for new talent in television. I know from my own beginnings in radio how important that first break can be. And I've tried to offer such a beginning to new performers on this program. In a sense, that's what I'm doing now, too. Having run out of fresh, exciting, new ideas to bring you myself, I feel I should give somebody else a turn. At any rate, this is in no sense a valedictory. In fact, if anything, it's more of a valentine to a network and a profession that have been very good to me. I hope I've given them a good run for their money. And who knows, someday I may re-enter the lists with a new saber, neither broken nor bent, and plow up the field all over again. So now, thank you. Goodbye. Good night. Come on, Leica. We're going to go home. Come on. Come on.
Major funding for this program is provided by American Express, celebrating the world of creativity through American Masters, the National Endowment for the Arts, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by annual financial support from viewers like you. Additional funding is provided by Rosalind P. Walter and Jack Rudin.